Mamdani gets humiliated by fiscal reality. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. Here in New York, Ugandan socialist rich kid Zohran Mamdani was whisked into power thanks to clever social media gimmicks and big promises. Zohran promised to freeze the rent, free childcare, free buses, and his most enthusiastic promise, of course, was to tax the rich to oblivion to pay for it all.
We can make the slowest buses in the nation fast and free.
Universal childcare is a priority for me.
An agenda that will freeze the rents.
Raise taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers.
A move Zohran is in no position to make is to tax the top 1% of all New Yorkers to pay for his ridiculous agenda. The taxes, of course, come from the legislature and the governor in the state. Barely a month into what's been a disastrous term already for Zohran the moron, his entire plan has blown up in his face. And with a scowl, Mamdani today admitting that he couldn't get it done. The revenue for his massive budget will not be coming from taxing the rich, but from raiding the city's rainy day funds and raising property taxes in New York City by nearly 10%. Further gutting New York's middle class.
Faced with no other choice, the city would have to exercise the only revenue lever fully within our own control. We would have to raise property taxes. We would also be forced to raid our reserves. At the heart of this path is a property tax increase. It would mean withdrawing $980 million from our city's rainy day fund in fiscal year 2026.
What happened to tax the rich? Mamdani looking like a whipped puppy in that video. It has been a rough month for him. So what did happen? Well, when he took his grandiose tax plan to Albany last week, state leaders and the governor effectively told him there is just no way we are taxing the rich anymore. He had a very bad trip, and that's not going to change. He's pretending like there's a chance he can bully the legislature into doing this by threatening to raise city property taxes. It's not going to happen. Our tax base is already fleeing the state, and the truth is there's nowhere left to squeeze. New York City's budget is truly unsustainable after a lot of left-wing leaders like Zohran Mamdani in a row, and city leaders need to start cutting excess, not dreaming up anymore. And it's a problem we're seeing all over the place as Western leaders grow more desperate for more revenue to buy more votes. Wealth taxes and taxes on unrealized gains are now on the table in many places, from California to locations in Europe, being pushed by the despicable lot that we allow to run our societies. A tremendous amount of the money that we send to our governments, of course, is wasted or stolen. You see that all the time. They piss away a lot of cash. As we saw in Minneapolis, the people in charge of taxing us have no interest in examining ways to prevent that waste from happening. They just want to ask for more. They don't want to look at anything. They don't want to know where it's going. They just need you to give them more money, even though about 50% of it they light on fire. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spent the weekend in Germany attempting to cosplay as an intelligent presidential hopeful. It didn't work out well for her. She was asked, though, about her favorite catchphrase, tax the rich.
So when you run for president, are you going to impose a wealth tax or a billionaire's tax?
I don't think that I don't think that anyone, and that we don't have to wait for any one president to impose a wealth tax. I think that it needs to be done expeditiously.
Got a little business suit on. She's so cute. The rich must be taxed as soon as possible, AOC says, and it all sounds so good to her base. It's the politics of jealousy and envy. The rich have more. We can take it from them. AOC thinks she's been elected to steal it and redistribute that money. A politician from Argentina who watched AOC's ideology destroy her country in recent decades had a very swift response.
You have the recipe that many Latin American countries applied many times. That is some relief in the short term, but end up being, a tragedy for the future. Huge public expenditure, price controls, sometimes wealth tax, and you end up wealth goes away and you have just the tax and you don't have wealth anymore. It creates a cycle, no? Then you have this short-term relief, but then goes with inflation, shortage, then you have more poverty, and the cycle goes and goes.
But by then, they've already gotten power and they just hold on to it, right? That's what usually happens in socialist nations. They just use it as a grift to get power and then they never leave, even when people are trying to vote them out. Governments grow too big. Left-wing politicians buy votes with money stolen from the people that work the hardest. You get to a very familiar point on the Laffer curve, where a higher rate begins eliciting less and less tax revenue. Capital flight. And politicians are left with massive bloated budgets, and there is nobody to pay for all the promises that they made. The country collapses. And again, they usually just stay in power and suspend voting. The Netherlands recently passed a 36% tax on unrealized gains through its House of Representatives. A 36% tax on unrealized gains. We've gotten to the point where politicians are looting your account for money you haven't even made yet. You haven't even made yet. Dutch politicians now taxing Dutch natives on unrealized gains to pay for the thousands of African migrants that they invited into their country. These politicians are literally begging for a violent revolution. They are begging for gallows. Look at all the wealth fleeing the high-tax UK recently. More than 15,000 millionaires leaving in 2025 alone. 15,000 millionaires. In 2007, Sweden abolished its wealth tax after tremendous capital flight, including the founder of IKEA. Studies showed that the tax ended up collecting less than 0.2% of the GDP of the country. The French did theirs in 2017. They ended their wealth tax after losing nearly 60,000 millionaires. That is a ton of money. Norway's plan was expected to raise 146 million euros for the country and ended up costing them 4 times that amount. They raised the taxes, the revenue went down. That's the other side of the curve. The harsh reality is prosperity comes despite government, never because of them. Grant Cardone is the CEO of Cardone Capital, moved his family, his business to Florida from California, like so many others, that capital flight. Grant, isn't it surreal that these unrealized gains and wealth taxes are being legitimately pushed as if we've never learned this lesson?
I don't get it, Rob. I tell you, billionaires should be rewarded, not penalized. They should pay lower taxes, not more taxes. Look, they're the great innovators in our country. The top 5 market cap companies on planet Earth all come from the United States of America. They're the biggest employers, biggest risk takers, biggest innovators. They're the world changers, and they should be rewarded, not penalized. Just this week, in the last 2 weeks, we've had Meta move down here to Miami.
Yeah.
We've had Palantir today announce. Yep. We've had Amazon's moved in. Hundreds of billions of dollars is being invested in Miami, escaping California, New York, and Illinois because of this. It just simply doesn't work.
The idea is that people think that the only way that, a person has value in a society is based on how much, I guess, they pay in taxes. You make a great point, though. It's a gutsy thing to say, but, these wealthy people that have major corporations and companies, the Jeff Bezos, all these people, think about how much prosperity they have created, how many jobs, how much wealth they've created, far from ever being taxed.
And everywhere they go, they spend money. Like, I don't understand that people don't understand the basic math a 5-year-old kid can understand. More money is going to follow rich people than poor people. No offense to the poor people, but it's always been like that. And taxing the rich and the innovators and the risk takers is only going to prevent those that want to come up not be able to come up. Yeah. And you can see the way many of the things, the patterns that you showed, the rich people will escape the taxes. So by taxing them and penalizing them, all you're doing is say, don't take risk.
Yeah, it is. It's something. And to watch, you're not a New York guy, and I don't blame you for not doing business here. I got to live here, and to watch our mayor
You don't have to.
today.
You don't have to.
I kind of do. But to watch our mayor today telling Kathy Hochul, essentially, it looked like it was like a bargain, like he was basically holding the city hostage. He said, effectively, if you don't agree to raise taxes on the rich, which you're now saying you won't, I'm going to raise property taxes on the 8 or 10 million people in New York, including the lower middle class, everybody. And it's like you're starting to look at this guy that he was the hero. He was this populist socialist hero, and he's now basically holding a gun to all of our heads and saying, I'm going to do this unless you raise the taxes on the rich. What a terrible look.
It's a terrible look, man. Remember, you want to be in flows of money. You want to move to where money is for all the middle class of America that's out there hustling and working and doesn't want a handout. What you really want is lower taxes on every group of people. Everybody. And especially at the top tier, you want to drop the tax rate, quit giving that money to the politicians that basically just give it to their to their favorite groups of people. Reward the billionaire, don't penalize them.
Well said. Grant Cardone, good to see you. Thanks. All right, the brilliant economic mind of Art Laffer created the Laffer curve more than 50 years ago, scrawling it on a napkin, showing that at some point, higher taxes always result in lower revenues, thanks to capital flight. And Mr. Laffer joins us now as we take a look at the curve there. Sir, good to have you. What better person to talk to about than the idea of this brilliant idea of a wealth tax, which is returning again. Everybody thinks you can just start hitting people for more and more money and it'll just stay there and take it. That's not the way it works, is it?
No, I left California in 2006 to come to Tennessee, which is the lowest tax state in the nation, because of California's taxes, including wealth taxes, which is a property tax, by the way, and the income taxes there. It just was untenable to stay in California. And so I came here to Tennessee, and I love it. You know, work is a lot more fun with lower taxes.
What is it? Why do these ideas resurface when they fail and then, you know, people remember for a short period of time? The memory's too short, I guess, and then they continue to revive themselves. We're watching it right now in New York with Zohran Mamdani. There's a wealth tax that's just been passed to some degree in the Netherlands. We're seeing this domestically. We're seeing it popularized in California right now and around the world. It's failed so many times.
Well, you know, I'm not a psychologist, so please don't ask me for a professional judgment of this, why they're crazy and stupid. But I think it's a generation thing. And Prop 13 was in 1978, and you have almost a whole new generation of people who've forgotten the arguments or forgotten the results and have forgotten how bad high taxes can be and how wonderful lower taxes can be. And, you know, these people need to be re-educated, and, you know, they can read it in textbooks from every day of the week and twice on Sunday, but there's nothing like seeing it happen in person, full up and close. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening in New York, in California, and Washington State, just as crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
And all these other places. And you see Florida, I mean, all these guys are going to Florida, but people don't realize that Florida's got a real property tax problem. Now, I've been working with DeSantis on that. I mean, DeSantis is doing a great job as governor in Florida. But there is a property tax problem in Florida, and they need to address that right away.
What is that? I mean, DeSantis talks about getting rid of property taxes altogether. What is the issue?
Isn't he great? If he succeeds in doing that, he is the great. I want him to be president for life if he does that. I mean, he is just spectacular on this issue. And
what is the problem, though, in Florida that you see?
Well, what you're seeing is falling property values. Now, you don't hear that, but property values are falling in the last 4 years. They have been because property taxes have been rising dramatically in Florida. And, you know, with the rising property taxes and no limitation on property tax bills, you know, this place is just going crazy. And I mean, there's so many property tax jurisdictions in Florida, you can't even keep track of them. So many separate authorities allowed to implant a property tax. So they're legislated to do that. So, you know, it's just very dangerous unless you have a statewide limitation on property taxes.
And just one last thing, you know, as we've seen so many stories in the last couple of months about how much of the money that we send to our, whether they're state, local, federal government, how much of that money is stolen, is wasted. I mean, the amount of money that they just light on fire in one way or another is so tremendous. And then they come to us and they demand more with zero interest in fixing the waste and correcting the waste of what we've given them before. Really shows you just how little they care.
They don't care at all. It's just totalitarian. They're just elected officials. You know, they may have this sort of wanting to help America in the first week on the job, but sooner or later it's personal, and they just want the aggrandizement of their power. And this is true of all administrations over long periods of time. I've been around and dealing with government for a long time, and it's just that way from the very beginning. And we need to keep control of them, not hope that they behave correctly and let them run reign over us. We just can't do that, Rob. And it's it's sad, and it's true here. It's true everywhere. I was just in Brussels last week with the European Union Parliament there, and all of these. They're just crazy. I mean, their ideas is, it's just wild-haired, all of that stuff. And you try to talk to them about economics. Economics is very serious stuff, and
they're not serious people. Yeah, these are very unserious people running. Yeah.
Well, they're not. The way they've structured it, no, they don't have seriousness. It's so many people and so many from different orientations, and they like being more extreme than the next one, and it's just very sad to see that happen. But we're on track right now, Rob, to have a major change in this country. Donald Trump is doing a great job in the U.S., and he's got a lot more plans for the future. And my guess is this is going to be like the Reagan Revolution, like Prop 13 and all of that in California. And I've never been more optimistic about the future than I am today.
I like to hear that. Art Laffer, we appreciate you coming on, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
All right, coming up, yet another trans massacre. A maniac kills his own son and ex-wife in the middle of a high school hockey game.
Stressed and fatigued? Brain feeling foggy? Don't have the energy you used to? It may be your liver. You must protect your body's most precious asset. Best-selling author and surgeon Dr. Russell Blaylock has developed natural solutions. His breakthrough new book, The Liver Cure, will help you boost energy, detoxify your body, clear brain fog, and reignite your metabolism. Improve your health and quality of life. Get The Liver Cure today.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. We are real ingredients only, always. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
Ready for relief?
I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
Why are so many dogs dying before their time? In my experience, great health starts with great food. That's why I created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It contains powerful canine superfoods that directly support your dog's digestion, skin and coat, mobility, and so much more. And it's air dried. That means cooked low and slow, no high heat. We have thousands of 5-star reviews. And for a limited time, get up to 50% off with our special TV offer. Go to badlandsranch.com/TV. That's badlandsranch.com/TV.
A heart attack? Do they have life insurance?
No.
But we have life insurance. John.
I'm trying to find something we can afford.
Fortunately, in only a few minutes, SelectQuote found John a $500,000 policy for only $29 a month. And his wife Anne a $500,000 policy for only $21 a month. Go to SelectQuote.com now and get the insurance your family needs.
At a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Daddy.
That was us over 10 years ago.
Now LifeVac is responsible for saving over 4,000 lives from choking.
In the time it takes you to pick up the phone and call, another life could be saved.
The LifeVac saved my life in
1 to 2 seconds. Protecting families has always been our mission. I'm sure you love your family like I love my daughter. Do us all a favor and get your own life back now.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-LIFEVAC. Order now.
Welcome back. Yet another trans massacre to report on. This time, mentally ill, middle-aged man named Robert Dorgan, who went by Roberta Esposito, opening fire on 4 of his family members and a family friend in the crowd at a hockey game in Rhode Island on Monday. You can see everyone start to run as they hear the bullets flying. He killed his ex-wife and one of his sons before turning the gun on himself. According to court documents, Dorgan's wife filed for divorce in 2020, stating gender reassignment surgery, narcissistic and personality disorder traits as the reasons. The same documents show that Dorgan got a gender reassignment surgery back in 2020. This is the face of mental illness right here. A day before he carried out this shooting on Sunday, Dorgan also threatened to go berserk in a trans rights rant on X, actually responding to a tweet from our friend actor Kevin Sorbo on the platform. It's just the latest example of trans violence. We just saw a horrific school shooting in Canada last week as we look at the faces of severe mental illness and violence masquerading as trans here in the West. And joining us now is Jamie Reed, Executive Director of the Courage Coalition. Jamie blew the whistle on a youth gender clinic as a case manager in St. Louis. Also with us, Ed Williams, the Executive Director of the Log Cabin Republicans. To you both, thanks for coming on. Ed, I want to start with you. We've got a severe mental health crisis in this country that we're calling trans.
Well, you know, I think there's an opportunity here to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. We've got all of the LGBT organizations out there. We've got the mainstream media. We've got Democrats all over the country, you know, telling us every day that, you know, Republicans are right around the corner from piling us into boxcars and shipping us away to concentration camps as a community. And I think that level of gaslighting has been absolutely detrimental to the LGBT community. You know, that it's despicable, and I think it's had an impact in everybody's mental health.
I don't disagree with you. I think they've stirred up that kind of chaos on immigration. They've stirred it up with the LGBTQ community. I think this is how that they try and run the vote up. This is how they try to inspire people to go to the polls and to win elections, and not caring about the damage that they're doing to the larger society. Jamie, as far as the mental health aspect of this, which certainly is the case with this killer and with, I think, all of them. What's really scary is that for years, and you've seen this, our doctors have been feeding this disease rather than treating it.
Absolutely. And what we have in this case is an adult male about age 56 who had medical procedures done to him that we collectively paid for with our health insurance that never should have occurred. So we participated in essentially making his mental illness worse. And then we also gaslit his entire family. So his ex-wife, his children, his parents-in-law were all downstream affected by medical interventions that should never have been sold or given to this man. And again, we paid for this. We paid for this together as a society.
And Jamie, just to speak a little more, I mean, this is a middle-aged man here, but we're doing this, or we have been doing this. I think it's ending now, but for years we did this to children.
Well, this man was living in Rhode Island, but was from Florida. Rhode Island is a sanctuary state, so it is still providing sanctuary for providers who are doing this still to kids. So we still have about half of our country still willing and stepping forward to physically harm kids in the same manner.
It's something else. Ed, I want to talk for a second about the pride flag, and a kind of a different subject here, but our Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is trying to elevate the flag to the same status as the U.S. flag and our military flags as well, after the Trump administration took it down from the Stonewall National Monument here in Manhattan. Take a listen to Schumer.
The Trump administration's removal of the Pride Rainbow flag from the Stonewall National Monument is a deeply outrageous action that must be reversed. It's an effing disgrace. I am introducing legislation to designate the Pride flag as a congressionally authorized flag in America, and that means it can be flown here and everywhere else. And no one can take it down.
Now, Ed, you're with the Log Cabin Republicans. You know, for those that don't know, that this is it's a gay conservative coalition. I wanted to know what your thoughts are on Schumer's position on that.
You know, Senator Schumer, he's really gone over the edge. I mean, you know, this decades ago, the pride flag used to be a symbol of our community, and it has been completely politicized. And now here he is being a proponent of taking a politicized symbol and making that congressionally authorized or recognized. You know, I think it's wholly inappropriate. I mean, you know, there are many other political flags that we don't recognize, the Gadsden flag and many others that, you know, just aren't appropriate on public lands where we need to be having, you know, treating everyone equally and not singling out any particular group.
Yeah, and just to follow up, you know, that's kind of what I was leading to is, you know, it used to be a flag that meant something to the gay and lesbian community, and it symbolized, you know, the past and oppression. But today, it almost feels like it's become kind of a Marxist trans icon. You know, the flag has, I think, been captured and has been corrupted. Is that how you feel?
Right. They've even gone so far as to call it the progress flag now. They've added a few more colors and a few more bars and a few more symbols and a few more letters just to try to shoehorn in as many marginalized people as possible. And it's completely become a political symbol, unfortunately.
It certainly has. Ed Williams, Jamie Reed, thank you both. We appreciate it, guys. Jesse Jackson, dead at 84. How he's being remembered versus reality. Up next.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
I'm Elmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's known as Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. You can learn everything about Immuno 150 by watching the 3 videos on our website. If you're interested, you can order online or call the number on the screen. Now, Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest pre-order rate in the industry.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
Your data is like a single domino. The moment it's stolen, it starts a chain reaction that puts the information that guards your assets at risk. 1 in 3 Americans have been a victim of identity theft. Are you willing to risk it?
When I saw zeros on that screen as my bank account balance, I went to immediate panic.
$21,000 just gone.
I opened my account and $30,000 is missing. Like $30,000. I have no idea what to do.
If your personal information is stolen, are you prepared to pick up the pieces alone? LifeLock is the leader in identity theft protection and restoration.
Once LifeLock got involved, everything changed.
With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they'll step in and fix it so you don't have to, guaranteed. Our highly trained U.S.-based restoration specialists contact institutions, dispute fraudulent charges, close compromised accounts, and even procure legal support far beyond the capabilities of your bank or credit card company.
LifeLock pursued this case further than I ever would have imagined.
If you call right now, you'll get LifeLock for just $9.99 a month for your first year. And as extra protection, all LifeLock memberships include the $1 Million Protection Package. Our members receive reimbursement for stolen funds and personal expenses, like lost wages, as well as coverage for lawyers and experts up to $3 million in total.
When the bank refused to reimburse my stolen money, the $1 Million Protection Package came through for me.
Our restoration guarantee and $1 Million Protection Package are included in all memberships with no additional fees.
I think it's natural to think that you can do this on your own. You can't. you need an expert in your corner.
Call 1-800-360-9220 and use promo code TV35 or go to lifelock.com/TV35 to join today.
Civil rights icon, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, has died at the age of 84.
For more than 5 decades, he stood as a towering figure of the civil rights movement.
Reverend Jackson was one of the last living links to Martin Luther King.
But there is no doubt that without Jesse Jackson, without what he did to the party, that President Obama would not have been elected in 2008.
He changed history. He was consequential. He was transformative. And I think that the post-King era would not have been the same without Jesse Jackson.
So, as you would expect, legacy media loving on Jesse Jackson, the civil rights leader / race hustler, passed away at the age of 84 today. The two-time Democrat presidential candidate, remembered by the left as a longtime civil rights icon, a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they tell us. The truth is a bit less romantic. Larry Elder joins us now to talk about that. Also, we have Ken Timmerman, the author of Shakedown, Exposing the Real Jesse Jackson. Good to have you both here. Larry, I'll start with you. Tell us about the real Jesse Jackson that we didn't hear about today.
Well, the real Jesse Jackson is quite different from the public image, starting with Martin Luther King Jr., starting with him saying as a very young man, Martin Luther King died in my arms. Well, it never happened. He showed up with a bloody shirt on network news television and basically started his career that way as somebody who had fabricated a story. He went on and anointed himself a reverend. I talked to pastors when I was doing this book in Chicago who were very close to him. He never went through any kind of reverend training. It was a phony title that he gave himself because, again, it gave him the aura of a martyr. He was able to wrap himself with Martin Luther King's mantle. So from the very beginning, he was a very different person than the image that he succeeded in selling the public.
Larry, your thoughts?
Well, Ken, I read your book, you might recall, and I interviewed you some time ago about your book. And I was very surprised, Rob, to read the obituary in the Washington Post. I thought it was pretty fair, warts and all. And it did, in fact, talk about the fact that Jesse Jackson had this controversy over the blood on his shirt after MLK was killed, to the point where Coretta Scott King stopped speaking to him for a long time and did not endorse him when he ran for president. It also talked about the term shakedown, which was used by one of the business leaders in the article, and how Jackson would use dubious stats, approach corporations, claim that they were engaging in racism, get all sorts of benefits that benefited him and his rich buddies. My problem with Jackson, though, is that as the issue of racism became smaller and smaller to the point where, in my opinion, it's almost insignificant in terms of anti-Black racism, Jackson's message remained the same: racism, 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 as opposed to the number one issue facing the country in general and the Black community in particular, which is the absence of fathers in the home married to the mother. Yeah. Jackson's own mother was a teenage woman who was impregnated by the married man next door, so Jackson could speak about this from the heart, but didn't. When Obama mentioned this, the plight of Black kids growing up without fathers, Jackson was caught on a hot mic denigrating Obama, saying, I'm going to cut off his a term for genitalia for saying it. So that's my issue with him. We should have been talking about the demise of the nuclear intact family and the horrible K through 12 education that Black kids are getting. In Illinois, his adopted home state, 30 public schools where 0% of Blacks can do math at grade level. Most of them are in the South and West Side of Chicago. And if Jackson said anything about this, I didn't hear it.
And yeah, that's a fantastic summation, Larry. And Ken, as I listen to all of that, I think that, the plight of the African American is at the core, I think, of the Democrat Party. I mean, that's where they run to get their voter base. They simp for that base as hard as they can. They embarrass and humiliate themselves, groveling for the approval of people like Jesse Jackson. But where would that group be if they had better leaders like Larry that would tell the truth and identify the problems and really come up with solutions?
people who would love to see as governor of California, for example. Yeah. And I supported your campaign. Was very happy to see you running for governor, Larry. It is a pleasure to be on with you. Look, I think there's two really paradigms in the black community, is what I learned as I was researching this book. There's the Martin Luther King paradigm, that you judge people on the content of their character. And there's the Jesse Jackson paradigm, that you judge people on their skin color. And I think, in fact, I heard from many people who were associated with him, young people, who said he felt he belonged to an older generation. He was no longer able to speak to people after, in the 2000s. He was stuck in the 1950s, the 1960s, when there was true racism in America. It was a huge problem, and it was another era. They wanted to learn how to bring product to market. They didn't want to be told that they couldn't get a job or couldn't become a CEO because of their skin color. And that's what Jesse was telling them.
The honest conversation that you won't hear really in any other media on a night like tonight, but it doesn't make it untrue. Larry Elder, Ken Timmerman, good to have you guys both. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Stephen Colbert got caught manufacturing a scandal today. Up next.
Donald Trump's administration wants to silence anyone who says anything bad about Trump on TV.
I'm John Glasgow, and whether the story is right here in New York City in a courthouse or at the border wall in Arizona, we're going to be boots on the ground to bring you all the facts to make sure that you get the story straight, because that's what's important to us right here at Newsmax.
You can't go out there. You'll never make it.
But I reckon I got to. I'm 45. It's time to screen for colon cancer.
Will I ever see you again?
I love you. Also, I'm just going to the porch.
I knew that.
It's true. The Cologuard test comes to you.
Just ask your provider or request online.
That way you can screen for colon cancer on your terms. It's effective and non-invasive.
False positive and negative results may occur. It is not for those at high risk. Skip the drama. Ask your provider or request Cologuard online.
When we became parents, everything changed, especially our perspective on food.
On our path to find healthier products, we started Good Ranchers.
To connect families with 100% American-born, raised, and harvested meats.
Quality beef, pork, chicken, and wild-caught seafood delivered to your door.
Because we want the best for our family and yours when gathering at the dinner table. Visit GoodRanchers.com and discover American meat delivered.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Doctor's Preferred Liver Defense is doctor-developed to support your natural detox function with clinically validated, triple-tested key ingredients to energize and renew your liver. Find Liver Defense in the supplement aisle at Walmart. Doctor's Preferred. Better science, better results.
Stephen Colbert, soon to be out of a job, but not soon enough, throwing a fit over his network, telling him that he cannot air an interview with Texas Democrat who's running for governor, James Tallarico, accusing the network of being scared of Trump's FCC and the equal time rule, which requires broadcasters to offer comparable airtime to rival candidates of a qualified political contender. Here is Colbert.
You know who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast. Let's just call this what it is. Donald Trump's administration wants to silence anyone who says anything bad about Trump on TV, because all Trump does is watch TV.
Colbert is not the smartest guy, dramatically overpaid and very dramatic. CBS is now denying Colbert's claims, saying they only provided legal advice regarding the FCC equal time rule, presenting Colbert options for how he can fill the equal time requirement, which included interviewing another of the Texas gubernatorial candidate's opponents in the race, which would have been as easy as just bringing on Jasmine Crockett, who's another Democrat that Colbert loves to get a tongue bath to every time he sees her. It didn't even have to be a Republican. This was all just a manufactured scandal for Colbert, trying to stay relevant, trying to get attention. He refused that alternative, ended up airing the interview solely on his YouTube channel with Tallarico. Kari Lake is the acting CEO of U.S. Agency for Global Media and a media expert herself, and she joins us now. How funny is this? All he had to do was stick to what this is a fundamental FCC requirement that has been ignored for a very long time. And Brendan Carr is not doing that any longer. And this was a very simple thing to fix.
It was a no-brainer, but Stephen Colbert doesn't have a brain, I guess, because all they got to do is bring Jasmine Crockett on. I thought she was their flavor of the week.
They love her.
But something tells me that they're realizing that Jasmine Crockett's not going to fly in this race. This is just my guess as an astute observer. And they wanted to bring somebody on who seemed a little more moderate because they realized that they're pushing people away with radical policy and agenda items like, transitioning children, hysterectomies for 13-year-old girls, castrations for 13-year-old boys, sex changes, radicalizing our kids in school, forcing them to march in anti-ICE rallies, flooding the border with illegals. They're realizing that all of that isn't working, and they want to present somebody who they think is going to seem more palatable, and they don't want to have someone like Jasmine Crockett on.
Which is, and I think you have a point that he wanted to push Tallarico because he thinks Tallarico might have the best shot as a Democrat in Texas, but that also shows Stephen Colbert as a political, such a political actor. When he's supposed to have this show, he's on a broadcast, federally regulated network, and he's sitting there thinking about what's best for the Democrat Party. How do I push the right person so that we can help the party gain power, which goes to the core of the issue here, which is that this is supposed to be a late night talk show. And it's supposed to be entertainment, and it's been so corrupted, and the fact that he's so indignant over it is what's comical.
Bingo. Think back to Johnny Carson when we actually could kind of just enjoy comedy in the evenings. Even Jay Leno, before they got so political, where they just became an arm in outreach for the Democrat Party or, frankly, the Communist Party.
Yeah. I got to get to one more before I let you go here. I want to switch to Iran. And we have a huge armada set up outside of the country. And we know that the regime in this country has attempted to hide the atrocities of what they did to their own people during the recent uprising. There is indications thousands of people might have been killed by the regime in charge of the country. You're at the U.S. Agency for Global Media. You're the CEO. You're working to get information to the people of Iran. Tell us how.
Yeah, and it's amazing. We're working really hard to get information. And we want to get information in any way possible. I know, Starlink is a great idea. VPNs work. Sometimes when the internet shut off, you got to go both ways. And we've been working really hard to get more VPN access for one of our grantees, Open Technology Fund, and the fake news is going crazy. They so want to try to hurt President Trump. They're trying to push this lie that we're not doing that. We've actually last week offered $10 million immediately to get that VPN service up and running. We're working with our partners at the State Department. They're working to get money for more VPNs. But the fake news has got their machine, their gaslighting machine out there, trying to say that we're trying to prevent President Trump's message from getting in. just the opposite. Everything we're doing at U.S. Agency for Global Media, whether it be RFE, Radio Free Europe, or VOA, we're trying to get that American message out that President Trump is standing up for the people of Iran, that America supports the people of Iran and freedom for them, and a removal, and frankly, a removal of what they've been going through, and hopefully they can celebrate freedom soon and get rid of this bloodthirsty regime that's trying to hurt so many people. I do want to thank the folks over at State Department and some of the folks up on Capitol Hill who've been working really hard with us to get money to them, to push more VPNs, to get the message in, because they got to hide, they can't let the Iranian regime know that they're actually accessing the internet, or they'll be hurt or worse.
Yeah. It's a heck of a mission, and all those ships, everything lined up out there as they try to negotiate this regime out of power is what I think the end game is here. They got to get them to leave or die. It's one or the other. Kari Lake, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob.
American taxpayers expected to receive a higher tax return this year under Trump's updated tax policy in the Big Beautiful Bill. The bill retroactively reduced 2025 individual income taxes by an estimated $129 billion. Because the IRS did not update those withholding tables after the law was enacted, many taxpayers are going to see bigger returns as their paychecks stayed the same. So you might be getting a surprise here when you do the taxes. I'm waiting a couple more weeks. You might be as well. Trump writing on Truth Social, in some cases, estimates are that over 20% will be returned to the taxpayer. 20% in some cases. Mark Quann is the author of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. He joins us now. Mark, a bigger check coming our way could help a lot of people, right?
Yeah, most people don't like tax time, but this will be actually a tax time with a little bit of good news. There's some errors that are going to come into your favor, get some higher returns, and if you put the work in, you can get that big standardized deduction. Plus, you can start itemizing to get more money back.
And just real quick, I mean, he talks about $129 billion in reduced taxes. Who feels that?
I mean, it's all across the board. Seniors are going to get a big bump in income because it's not only a bigger tax, less taxes, but it might not avoid the taxes on Social Security payments. Seniors, it's great. Small business owners, any small business owner, we got to itemize. There's a huge deduction in the Big Beautiful Bill for business owners. Middle America.
Is the no tax on tips in there too?
What's that?
Is the no tax on tips? That made it in, right? That's retroactive to 2025?
No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. We get to itemize our deductions, even as employees get to itemize our deductions for cars as long as they're made in the United States.
Bring it on. Less taxes. Mark Quann, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Get a copy of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. Learn a little about little-known strategies the wealthy use to pay less and keep more. Check out the offer and save $25 right there on the screen. Gavin Newsom, the rich, handsome guy that's had it so easy, plays the victim again. Next.
Whoa, 90% off? I have to purchase now. My phone!
That was a scam link.
Try this one. We installed PCmatic.
PCmatic blocks ransomware before threats can strike.
It's 100% made in America security.
Trusted by homes, businesses, governments, and now you. Stop guessing.
Start blocking.
Get
PCmatic.
Let's face it, folks, car repair costs are not going down anytime soon. In fact, they may be only getting worse. Protect your hard-earned dollars with a money-saving plan for your out-of-warranty vehicle with one call to CarShield. Plans offer protection on big items like your car's engine, transmission, AC, and thousands of parts and systems. Call now. Waiting could cost you thousands.
Get your free quote and lock in your rate now. Call 800-258-7591.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's known as Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. You can learn everything about Immuno 150 by watching the 3 videos on our website. If you're interested, you can order online or call the number on the screen. Now, Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry.
Prevagen, official sponsor of U.S. figure skating. Danny trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm a retired military veteran, had 43 years of service. I wanted to stay active in my community, so I work as a volunteer at national parks. After I retired, I was looking for something for my brain. I started taking Prevagen, and I definitely noticed it made a difference. I've been taking Prevagen for 8 years. If you really care about your brain, I recommend taking Prevagen.
Prevagen, for your brain.
A heart attack? Do they have life insurance?
No.
But we have life insurance. John.
I'm trying to find something we can afford.
Fortunately, in only a few minutes, SelectQuote found John a $500,000 policy for only $29 a month. And his wife Anne a $500,000 policy for only $21 a month. Go to SelectQuote.com now and get the insurance your family needs.
At a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
1 second, Grandma. This guy's gonna buy my car.
Okay, you need Carvana. Entering plate number, no accidents, right?
No.
Generating offer. Carvana can pick it up tomorrow.
That's an amazing offer.
Sell your car the easy way with Carvana.
Your Florida life is calling, and we have the answer. Valencia in Florida by GL Homes. Premium 55-plus living in 5 prime Florida locations. Gorgeous new homes from the mid-300s to $2.5 million. World-class resort-style living 24/7. Huge clubhouses, on-site dining, pickleball, and more. Effortless, low-maintenance living. Valencia, your Florida life is calling. Experience more at valenciaflorida.com.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. Senator Ted Cruz blasting California Governor Gavin Newsom for trash-talking our ICE officers in Munich. Take a listen.
Just like AOC and Whitmer, Newsom is apparently thoroughly historically illiterate. He said we've never seen National Guards federalized in the states. I guess his history book does not discuss the civil rights movement.
Historically illiterate, he said. Historically illiterate. Newsom responding on X by trying to turn this into something offensive and trying to play the victim, saying Ted Cruz calling a dyslexic person illiterate is a new low even for him. Of course, Newsom getting community noted for this because Ted Cruz never talked about his ability to read, but rather his knowledge of history, calling him historically illiterate. Cruz clapping back at Newsom saying, I didn't say you couldn't read, you clown. I said you were historically illiterate because you apparently have no idea that Eisenhower federalized the National Guard to stop them governors from defying federal law. The bigger point is this. Gavin pointing out his dyslexia so broadly and for no reason at all is the latest attempt by Gavin to gain popularity among a party that loathes handsome white guys who've had very easy lives. He knows that's his biggest liability. So what's he been doing lately? He's been claiming that his childhood was really tough, that he never had it easy, that I'm dyslexic. I'm a victim too, he screams to the party of professional victims, hoping to win them over. Because the worst thing you can be in the Democrat Party right now is exactly what he is. A rich white guy that's had an easy, easy, easy ride. Next up, left-wing political consultant Teslin Figueroa race baiting to the max on CNN.
Right before we went to break, you asked me what country was I living in. This one that we just went through.
You should be
the country that did. What country enslaves folks, which is pretty much the private prison system. What country does this? You can't possibly be a history buff and also say that as well.
Let me give you how bad it can be. The Romans used to burn to the ground.
You can't never give me how bad it could be. You could never give me how bad it could be. I live it on a daily basis, baby. I live it on a daily basis, honey.
You have a woman that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for sharing her opinion on television, talking about there's never been any time worse in history than it is right now in America, and she knows it because she lives it every single day. She said that with a straight face on CNN as she makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to give her idiotic opinions. You cannot make it up. Next up in the UK, a man once convicted of plotting a terror attack on a British consulate is now campaigning for office. in the Birmingham City Council, the second biggest city in the country. Shahid Butt was among 8 Brits and 2 Algerians convicted of plotting a terror attack on the consulate. Also found guilty of plotting to blow up an Anglican church and a Swiss-owned hotel in Yemen. Butt is campaigning on a pro-Gaza platform, an award where white residents make up just 8% of the population. And finally, the Premier League and English Football League bending to the needs of Islam, with soccer matches pausing briefly to allow Muslim soccer players to break their fast during Ramadan. Yes, isn't multiculturalism fun in the UK? For those who don't know, Ramadan means Muslims abstain from food and drink from dawn until sunset, and has been the case since 2021. Club captains alongside match officials will find a natural pause in the game so that they can break their fast. Next up, the NYPD makes a big save as our majestic national bird needed a little help in New York today. That's next.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Ready for relief?
I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
Big news! Super Beta Prostate is better than ever with a new advanced formula, enhanced with saw palmetto.
In time, you'll notice less urges to urinate, improved bladder emptying, and you won't be getting up at night for so many bathroom trips.
Super Beta Prostate is the #1 selling brand for men's prostate and urinary health, and the #1 recommended by urologists. And now the new advanced formula is better than ever with saw palmetto.
Super Beta Prostate works.
Find it at these retailers.
Shipping 10,000 packages a month can feel chaotic.
Relax. There's ShipStation.
ShipStation syncs all your inventory and automates manual tasks, so you can ship more orders faster. Start your free trial today at ShipStation.com.
Imagine this banana is a Byrna less lethal launcher, capable of shooting rock-hard kinetic and tear gas mixed with pepper chemical irritants.
The ammo can incapacitate an attacker from 60 feet away without causing death.
This Byrna less lethal launcher is legal in all 50 states. No permits required.
Over 600,000 Byrna pistol launchers have been sold to government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and to private citizens.
Do you want to know what the Byrna less lethal launcher looks like? Visit Byrna.com.
Introducing Stogo, the only apparel with adjustable medical-grade support, engineered with high-strength cables that reinforce the body, designed to help you overcome injuries, minimize pain, and regain the confidence to get back out there. Learn more at Stogo.com.
And finally tonight, I've never seen a bald eagle in New York City. I have now. NYPD making a big save this morning, patrolling the frozen Hudson River right there by the George Washington Bridge. And look what they find on a piece of ice. NYPD Harbor Unit spotting an injured bald eagle, our majestic national bird, floating on ice, had a cut up paw, a little cut on his beak. He was hurting and he was screaming out for help. And here come New York's finest here, bringing him to safety. A picture of the bald eagle right here. Got a little cut above the beak. He had a rough time, probably a little hungry too. It's hard to find food when it's this friggin' cold.
Yeah.
He's at a bird sanctuary in New Jersey, Rob, where he will get back to healthy. I've lived here for 12, 13 years. I've never seen a bald eagle in this area.
I like
of the
your
country.
whole narration. It's like the softer side of Rob Schmitt. Like, you cared. Can we see that eagle again? I don't even see the cut.
Let's see the eagle one more
He
time.
might have been like acting here, this eagle, but if you see them fly, I've got one kind of in my neighborhood.
Amazing.
They are majestic.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of feel pride.
They're badass, kind of like the country is. It's like you look at them, they look like you don't want to mess with that bird.
That's such a good point, because it's a great bird for our country. Like, imagine if it was the pigeon or the seagull or something like that. It's like the owl. Owls are lame, okay? They can't even move their eyes. They just move their heads, and everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. I'm like, look at the eagle. That's a talented creature.
I didn't know it was going to turn into such a broad bird conversation.
I like
but,
birds.
if you want to keep going, we can go.
Thanks, Rob. We'll leave it there. We'll do it tomorrow.